There's nothing other than how this unfolds. Nothing other than this. Everything is the outcome and result of how it unfolds. But how it unfolds is not something that can be manipulated in a way that we used to manipulate, and this is where it belongs to that much, much subtler domain than just injecting something, prescribing something, you see? So the tradition here, aligning yourself with tradition and with understanding, is activating dormant areas even in your own body. Because there's no such thing as just your body or my body.
I would love to receive some general guidance on my process. So maybe I start with sharing a little bit of background. So my main practice with meditation, my main experience with meditation was through Kundalini yoga, as I mentioned before. I've been trained to be a teacher around 7 years ago, and from that time I've been practicing. Mm-hmm. But that is not the first. I came across this practice only because I had my own process which was rather difficult, and I was looking for some kind of help, for someone who will guide me and explain to me what's going on, because in one of my meditations, and at that time I used to just do silent sitting, just go to nature, just sit, and I've been in very silent, naturally, effortlessly silent state for 9 months, without not triggered by any sadhana or anything like that, like a technique or practice, like Kundalini yoga exercise, for example, just in meditation. And in one of those sittings, I felt very strong heat rising and the body doing mudras and breaths which were really intense and all kinds of things which at that time I didn't understand at all. I just let it happen. Mm-hmm. And then I could feel there is some heat rising up, but I could feel there is something wrong, but I don't know what exactly, I don't know what's going on at all. I'm just observing calmly. And finally, it was just getting worse physically. I couldn't feel part of my body. Nervous system was maybe overloaded or little damaged or something like this. That's my understanding, right? So I started to look for help. I went to a neurologist, and I don't know how that happened, but he asked me he suggested that I had a Kundalini experience and that he doesn't want to deal with that because he's not trained to deal with such things. And he recommended me to go to a Tibetan doctor. But I couldn't reach this person, so I ended up with Kundalini yoga teacher.
No, but you said you got yourself into Advaita.
That was through other teacher. I used to go to Muji meetings and listen to read Ramana's books a lot, and Papaji and this direction.
Mm-hmm.
I spent a lot of time contemplating that and Gangaji, and she particularly mentioned things around the healing path and all of this, how that this is all, it's fake ultimately, right? Because there's nothing to heal in a way. And all these kriyas in Kundalini yoga tradition are meant to be kind of healing.
Just don't want to.
Yeah, I know. I just know how to say it more straight.
Jump into conclusions. Is Gangaji said there's nothing to heal?
In a way, yes.
It's fake.
I don't want to say exactly because that's been years ago, so I don't want to say I'm saying it correctly because that's been maybe 4 years ago, but something along the lines, or I took it like that.
Okay, no, that's very, very a grown-up way of putting it on your part.
Yeah, and that shook the ground because that was something I lean on to go and help me be more disciplined and feel more centered and more grounded. But I dropped it, and for 3 years I haven't been practicing anything, technically speaking, from the tradition. But I noticed that I'm actually kind of getting worse in terms of how I function. And I started having again terrible headaches, burning in my head, which lasts for a long time and is so strong that I can't do anything in my eyes, behind my eyes, in my skull, in my body in general, sometimes so much energy that I have to lay down and just lay down. And that's like the maximum I can do. And I'm also trying to guide my business, which I'm doing, and like function in life,
Yes,
right? And that's just sometimes just difficult. And I just don't know what to do, you know? I don't have like a really specific question. I just really look for general guidance, which direction to go, because I feel quite lost and stuck and in contradictive kind of place.
No, I understand. I understand very clearly. And you have mentioned on the first evening, well, it was only yesterday, that you have taken Kundalini course.
Yes.
And you enjoyed it. Have you completed the course?
I haven't completed yet.
But so far...
But so far I did enjoy, yes.
What you have, let's say, learned, what you have been exposed to in terms of what the course contains, what can you say? How does it feel? What do you feel that what is being? Because
that is taking me beyond.
It's not this, like, remember, even at the beginning, I want to make sure the distinction is made in terms of where, let's say, this particular perspective on Kundalini comes from, so that we don't confuse, let's say, even in terms of terminologies, language-wise, right? The term Kriyas, how I distinguish it from Kriya Yoga, right? There's a whole Kriya Yoga, many lineages, but all of them somehow would like to feel, think, or imagine they are connected to Babaji, right? And this legendary yogi being, or the Kriya Yoga of Paramahamsa Yogananda, right? Which is again also kind of like Shri Yuktisvar, all this, or Kriya, how it is spoken of in the Kundalini Yoga, founded by Yogi Bhajan. So when the purpose of that course is to separate wheat from the chaff and to begin from the fundamentals. And we remember the course even begins from positioning us in terms of what we actually experience and the nature of experience. So therefore necessity was to speak to what we spoke today, even if in brief. Remember? Laying down the foundation. And then we go into this more intricate nature of things when we speak about 3 Kundalinis, remember? That very, very unique perspective, very, very shy-wide perspective here. So I don't know where you are, how far you are in the course, but there's a lot of things will be given to Kundalini care, a lot of things to separate from all this misunderstanding about the chakras, energy work, and everything. All this is there in the course. I just want you to know so far what is your experience of the course itself. Let's say even down on the level of somatic responses, on the level of how you feel after, let's say, a session or 2, modules, how they are called.
After a few sessions, I started focusing more on the Hamsa meditation just throughout the day, and when I did that, then it was very easy to reach a very centered, strong kind of state with like almost dense intensity of the energy, something like that I would say, and it was kind of, I maybe would like trying to take me beyond that particular frame of thinking which is that Kundalini happens to us and that we are not it, right? I can feel that, and I can see that sometimes there is just simply fear, I guess, because I have this moment in meditation when I kind of experience that fully, but I reach this fear. And it brings me down to this kind of contracted experience.
Yes.
I just don't know how to go. How to let go, maybe. Not to go, how to really shake it off.
So, no, this is fine. This is absolutely fine. Don't hold back. Don't hold back. Don't feel. It's absolutely legitimate. Express yourself. It's fine. This is a safe place to do it. Okay? So we're all here for that. All of us. It's good. It's very good. Very good. I hope you don't mind me asking you, what is your name that given to you by your parents, not the spiritual name?
Martina.
Martina. Do you mind if I will occasionally call you that other than Avtar?
I don't mind that.
Okay, I just want to have that permission. So first of all, this what you're sharing, what you're going through still after so many years, right, is legitimate. I would like us to first acknowledge that legitimacy of that fear, legitimacy of why you or anyone would feel that way. Okay? So this is not something imagined or something that is somehow due to the lack of understanding. First, we want to acknowledge this, okay? So that you know that it's not that something is wrong with you. It's a very important first step we have to take right now, even though you've taken already many, many very courageous steps. Many courageous steps that led you to be here right now, in this very moment, just as we converse. All these steps you have taken to understand, to find answers, to find ways, isn't it? To find ways. It's not like you were gullibly somehow hoping it will go one day, you come or do it. No, you were in pursuit of this. So this already shows the tremendous dedication and the strength of your character, which is priceless. But the legitimacy of that fear is not yours. So first I want you to understand the nature of that fear first. To understand the nature of that fear before we can take next step. See? So it is as simple as the fear of losing the sense of self. It is the fear of losing of all that you know about yourself. No more, no less. Isn't it? That's what gives that existential abyss-like standing, or that, when no matter how courageous we are, like most courageous men standing at the precipice of the deep, deep drop, it starts to feel funny in the stomach. These are all normal, legitimate functioning, self-preservation. It makes us move away from that in a natural way. So this fear is existential fear of losing the sense of who you are. See? Not necessarily losing yourself, although here we're entering the way of the language. See the difference between losing the sense of who you are and losing yourself. Powiedz po polsku to, co teraz powiedziałem, po angielsku przetłumacz to dla siebie i dla reszty. Dla wszystkich. Dla wszystkich? Tak? Bo ja chcę, żeby to było, żeby powiedziałeś to w języku, którym mówisz od urodzenia. I'm speaking in Polish, so that it will be good to translate what I just said into mother tongue for everyone else. Just the last bit what I said, right? The difference between...
Różnicy pomiędzy zagubieniem poczucia siebie,
Mhm.
a zagubieniem siebie.
Mhm. Yeah, właśnie. The difference is here is what makes all the difference. Although it can be used interchangeably, because that's how we speak, and that's what makes us fully invested in our interactions with the world, with everything, in all our relationships. Everything is colored by the way of the language, because that's how we learn to think. And whether we now know it or not, it's intimately interconnected to how we feel as well. We cannot separate the language from the sphere of feeling. We learn to do that. We've been taught to do that. We do that to our children. I do that to my children. To big girl you've met, 16-year-old, she was with us in the first evening, right? Now 3.5. We confine that awareness as parents. Confine that awareness, that walking wonder, absorbing it all. Creating this framework of understanding. Encouraging, in fact, when it is getting confined. So this sense of losing oneself and losing the sense of who you are is what separates here the very important line of understanding. This is where we will begin. First, before we go into the just like, roll up your sleeves, practical aspects of do's and don'ts. Because this is more important. When you understand this, then vistas of how to go about it open up. Because you're done with trying different things. See? That I would say that, not to make it kind of overtly generalized, but when people like yourself find their ways into this container, into this work, and present their, let's say, situational setup, predicament, dilemmas, the way you did and what you went through, and it's very clear that it's not just you walked off somewhere out of the blue and like, oh, I need first solution, give me the pill, give me something. No, you know what you're dealing with here already. This is why I want us to retrace back and really address it from that place first. We're redressing it. So first and foremost, you can't lose yourself. You can't lose yourself. You can lose your mind. That's a different story.
I think there is a fear around that as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course. We will deal with that in a moment. But because they're related here, the fear, existential fear, is actually in that, is in losing that what we are. Because we consider ourselves to be so and so, but the fear here is existential. When truly analyzed and scrutinized, right? And you are intelligent, bright, young lady, you will see that actually at the surface level of affairs, or at the face value even better, at the face value of it all, you've been around. Kundalini yoga, Muji, Gangaji, particularly with that kind of branch, right? how Advaita, Neo-Advaita, non-duality is known. It's a continued reminder, that continued ongoing reminder, you are not who you think you are. You think you're so and so, but that's not true. And this is the stuff of, Eckhart Tolle speaks that. The very, very straightforward, good old Eckhart speaks that, right? For housewives who, forgive me for that kind of very old-fashioned, macho kind of way of using the language. I don't have time to refurbish myself. I'm barely enough keeping up at the pace of life. But housewives, they're just like, yes, Eckhart, of course. Of course I must be more than just, what my husband wants me to be, or my children demand of me, or my parents. Of course I'm more than that. You've done that part. But why is it accompanied by this fear? You can clearly sit down and even write down in your journal, what is it that you consider what makes the sum total of who you are? It doesn't mean that you should do that or you have done that. Hypothetically, right? What that comprises, born here, there, education, certain setup of what forms into that conglomerate national identity, right? But traveled, you speak very good English, right? I don't know if you speak other languages, right? That you're a worldly person. It's not like you were born somewhere, right? And sitting in the same village, unless I'm mistaken, right? And everything around that. And every little street is that's how the world is imagined. No, you've been around, no? Where have you learned the Kundalini yoga?
Actually, the teachers were coming to Poland.
Oh, they're all coming to Poland these days.
Yeah.
When I was in Poland, the best of Polish race was out. The most creative, adventurous, and they were all out. France, Germany, England, United States, you name it. So it's good to know that now that water's equalizing, find its level. But you get the drift, right? You understand. You get the drift. It's an English way of saying, you understand what I'm saying. That, effectively speaking, you know that already. You know that there is this set of identity. 2-3 satsangs with teachers that you mentioned would orient you already. The person who clearly hears this and has understanding will very quickly grasp this. And it's not difficult to, yes, of course, I'm not just that. All this dissolved in a deep sleep each time. Repeatedly, every day is dissolved, and then reassembled itself, and then dissolved, and reassembled, and dissolved. Something else must be going on here. So, the fear of losing yourself versus fear of losing the sense of self is what we redressed now. So that you understand that this fear is legitimate, and this fear is not even about you losing the sense of who you are. You see? Whether birth-giving name or spiritually giving name, with all that what kind of goes in terms of the projected reality out there. Psychologically speaking, which spiritual discourse utilizes as well, we are always split, in a state of split, always. This, an original state of split. And that split follows to the way we perceive ourselves, the way we are with ourselves, and the way we, let's say, give our face to the world. It's very well known. It's very well known. In a way, in a lot of that kind of psychologically oriented work, where the work meant to be directed to, so as to, as they say, to locate when one shadow potentially hiding, where one has blind spots and so forth, where the traumas may have the chance to, because it's all between that, the dynamic between who I am when nobody's watching, and how do I project myself so as to fit in the tribe. See? This is what it means to be a human being at that level. Because we're tribal beings, we need to be accepted by a tribe. So therefore, from time immemorial, since the time immemorial, there was this necessity to project ourselves in such a way that we carve space out there. Whether that space sitting in a corner and nobody notices me when I come in, or coming and sitting like this, being a center of attention, makes no difference. It's carving space where one feels one wants to be, or one feels comfortable. So, existential fear is something else, and that's what unmistakably belongs to the Kundalini process. Because Kundalini here did not come to override this, what spiritual discourse talks about. See? It comes truly to override everything. And that's why it causes this very deep sense of disconcern, particularly if it didn't happen yet. Because when that happens, it's post factum. It's like kind of, maybe I shouldn't go there, but some analogies can be given, It's like, oops, I lost my virginity. Oh, but that just happened. See?
So what I don't understand here is that before the most intense moment when the process began, which I could pinpoint at least, I felt more non-localized, so to speak, than now, and I feel like there's like before and after kind of book of my life, and before was in silence, not all life, but like few months before was in silence, and much less contracted experientially, much less feeling like I'm this after Martina going around, and then less of that, like almost none of that I can say, and then after that a lot of that, and I can't really understand why.
Complete sounds contradictory, isn't it?
It does, right? It feels so much like it's the opposite of everything that you can think of, right?
Yes.
And more emotions and more like karmic kind of difficult situations, everything suddenly became like this, and it continues to be like this for years.
Yeah, see this. When you say this, it's another confirmation that you're not making things up, and it is authentic. Everything what you just added, it just reconfirms the authenticity of that process. See?
Yeah, and my mind started saying something that something is wrong, Like
okay,
classic
well, we'll get there. So it's a good addition. But I'm so with you. It's exactly how it feels. In the earlier years, particularly before going out to teach publicly, I was in intimate correspondence with a lot of, let's use this term though, kind of outlived itself, seekers of truth. Many of them were linked to transcendental meditation movement as my brothers and sisters in arms, so to speak, because this is where I got initiated to. And some of them advanced, most of them were like on the path and going through this. And because I had that breakthrough, I kind of was like on the other side and could report, maybe outside the Plato's cave, and now like, hey, it's safe here. Don't worry about it. Yeah, they told you no, trust me, come over, come out. Like, and of course it was, I'm paraphrasing, but it was like 600 letters. It was meant to be my first book, meant to be published 15 years ago. Like, in my exchanges, this was almost extraordinarily a repeated pattern of exactly that. what I went myself through, and what others would report. That prior to that, everything nice and dandy, everyone meditating, coming rejuvenated, diving into the active sphere of life, everything is so good, everything is just completely rolling with it, career, this, that, okay, tired, time to recharge the batteries, there's the cushion, there's a mat, there's a room, sit down there, again, half an hour, as fresh as a daisy, and the whole evening ahead of me. And then when the real deal starts to happen, everything is just crumbled down. Suddenly everything is just overwhelmingly coming, pressing with everything what you just said. Because it is exactly like that. See? Exactly like that. But the only difference here is that velocity or the speed or the intensity of the process. You see? So this is why I do this work in a way. This is why I do this work. Because someone pointed out to me to the wound of what I myself already clearly saw, but in a very clear, articulate way, reflecting it. It's out there. This video is definitely, some of our team members can maybe help us to locate that. It's a darshan I gave in Berkeley, in this house where a lot of the aforementioned by you teachers, old Muji in his heydays, all these teachers, those who are now household names, all of them went through that. All of them. All of us went back in the days and did our Sonoma County, Berkeley, Palo Alto, like Santa Cruz, all of this kind of because Bay Areas, this is where it's all happening. It's where it's always been happening. So I had this Sunday gathering in this guy's house who opened his doors. He's well-to-do. He wanted to give back to the community. So he would hold teachers of various kinds, healers, shamans, you name them. So it was my gig, and I was doing it. So it was room packed. There was no, people were in the kitchen, hallways, really packed. And there was this question. I had long hair, I really looked good, I was young, right? Speak and span, like this. Still kind of only 2 children to worry about at the time, And this guy, there was a couple first, and then this guy was there. He spoke with this, Latin accent, right? He's some Spanish kind, Spanish-speaking country for sure. Don't know where he was from. Beside the point. But he was saying that for many years I was in this yoga camp. I was in these yoga circles. I became a teacher training, advanced, all this sort of yoga, tantra, yoga, everything. And I started to feel dissatisfied. And then this non-duality began. It's all this non-duality was really upon us. So I realized that very big aspect, massive aspect, what was missing in these yoga circles was exactly what non-duality was bringing in. So he said, I went completely, radically into that now. I stopped doing all this, I stopped teaching, stopped doing asanas, pranayamas, meditation. I went all satsang, this teacher, that teacher. Right, I couldn't get enough. I was soaking myself with all that. And after a while, he started to feel dissatisfied again. He started to feel he's all in the head, all this knowledge is in the head, all this understanding in the head. Somatic experience is lacking. And he felt there and then that there is this split, enormous split. He brought this question to me. This darshan is recorded. And I spoke to that, see? In a very passionate, fiery way, as I often back in the day spoke, When I kind of also, in America you have to be, in America, particularly the closer you get to Hollywood, to LA, you have to really be boastful. Otherwise nobody takes you seriously. You have to really, kind of, you're in a country and in an area of the Brad Pitts and Marilyn Monroe's and Marlon Brando's and Lady Gaga's. You have to really beat yourself in the chest. Nobody takes you seriously otherwise. So of course I was really rolling with it, And it was very impressive, like this. You could feel how the whole room, because room was made mostly of that satsang goers. And he pointed to that wound to which I have been sensing, feeling that lack. It was my job, in a way, to bring that reconciliation. Later on, years after, very same question was asked of me in Topanga. It's in LA, Topanga area. It was this yoga studio. What do you think is the main problem in spiritual community today? And I spoke to this already from some years of experience, which separated those two, let's say, conversations. And it's exactly that. You see? Exactly that. How there's a great disparity between what is happening in terms of that entire involvement of our neurophysiology. And of course, the primacy of awareness, primacy of consciousness. So this is why I do this work the way we do it consistently now. So it positions all our understandings, irrespective of where we come from, irrespective of traditions, walks of lives, where we have been, which teachers we sat with, because we all experience. And the emphasis here is in the breaking down what experience is made of. And this is why I said, in a Kundalini course, it starts there. Experience is made of that. So all this what we experience here, the full gamut of perceptions and cognitions, is ignited and carried by the power of prana, active agency of consciousness. That's the trinity that we drew before. We can go back to that tomorrow, and we'll see how the upper circle and the lower circle united and held in charge by that middle circle here, which is pranic currents. And Kundalini process is all about that. So, in order to address and redress the Kundalini process, we have to retrace ourselves as much and as far back as we could, so that we understand what Kundalini actually is. Because also it was conscious decision to no longer be involved in one-on-one sessions, which in earlier years I was offering left, right and center. But I realized that that's not the way. See, because people very often begin to utilize this as a psychological tools, where I never felt like this is my job. I'm not offering therapy here. See? So at some point, this was completely, consciously removed from the services we offer. But I remember it was almost a rule of thumb. Every session, at least every other session, is with some form of Kundalini emergency. I got myself name for that. And where I find myself was to first and foremost to position people there and then to what is happening as opposed to how it is perceived. And of course, when we view Kundalini process as something happening to me, then we are completely and utterly there and then in a mess. Because it is then separated, the process separated from what we actually experiencing. It's almost like, forgive me, when we catch a virus, when we catch a flu, we speak of it in the same way. You see? Like there is this normal functioning state, and then now my body is under the impact of this virus It's factual. Yes, I caught a cold. I caught this because I was this and that. We can speculate, we can give this, or because my immune system was down, or because the virus is too strong, one way or another. It has nothing to do with me. What a bummer. I just need to get through it. Lay low, take rest, I'll be over. This understanding of Kundalini is not helpful. And believe me, there's a lot of that kind of approaches out there to view Kundalini before treatment begins as some kind of phenomenology that happens almost on par with catching some undesirable form of whatever. Whereas in fact, what Kundalini is that what illumines everything. Kundalini is an active form of consciousness, prana. And this is where, if you remember, in the Kundalini course, 3 Kundalinis were addressed. We don't speak like that at the retreats, but in the course, I took that particular internal tantric vocabulary, tantric language. Remember? Para Kundalini, Chit Kundalini, and Prana Kundalini. All this creation, all this world, right now all of us enjoying this marvel of perception, cognition, sharing this space, all this is an expression of Prana Kundalini. Para Kundalini is inaccessible. It's beyond. This is before manifestation. And Chit Kundalini is where that principle of where it will go. Where would it, right? Remember that very self-fluctuation. If the propensity to remain, as it were, in that tight embrace with awareness, esoterically speaking, if the Shiva Shakti embraces that dominates, then no propensity for manifestation will take place, it will fall back into para. But if the propensity to manifest, in other words, if whilst on the laps of Shiva, Shakti opens one eye towards something other than Shiva, other than awareness, everything is just cascading in extraordinary myriad of wave of manifestation by tremendous release of force of prana. This is how Tantrikas, Shaivites speak, and that's the understanding of Kundalini. Nothing of the kind would find in books. And then we deal from there on only with Prana Kundalini, because that's what we are neurophysiologically speaking. Our neurophysiology is that. Everything, from smelling of the flower and knowing the jasmine from the lavender, to distinguishing the tastes of food, to having preferences, attraction or repulsion in terms of where we want to give our sense of sight for the experience. All this is governed by nothing other than that force. And this is, effectively speaking, all expressed in a way how that prana Kundalini, in a state of homeostasis. And this part is very important in the course. I can't wait till we turn it into a book, because I want to read this myself. Can you believe it? Right? They say actors don't want to watch movies where they play. A lot of I've had that. But musicians love hearing their own performances. So I want to take these words back, transcribed and printed. So I don't want to play here Mr. Modest. I done my job, I received my 20 million for a role, and I don't care how the movie is doing. That's not true. I want to know how the movie is doing. See? I want to read every word now reflected back to me, because that's what this whole thing is about. Everything is that. Everything reflects back on me. So that's what Kundalini is. It's that power that awareness casts back upon itself. Everything for the sake of what this is. Everything for the sake of the self. And it's only Kundalini can take it back truly in a magnanimous, full way. Before that, it was always stolen. Before that, it's always in a way of sneaking behind the scenes, and you are left bereft of the real deal. Before that, it's all pretenses. Before that, it's all a charade, a show. So this is the law. These are the sleeping queens. These are this is that. This is all the fairy tales of all the world's folklore here come into play. All the epics, all of them put together, all are expressions of one and only Prana Shakti. All of them. So in a state of homeostasis, it gives rise to that apparent sense of so and so. Intoxicated in her own dream, she releases poison through the entire body. Remember that part in the course? That's what I want to read back. Remember that? Early
I'm not sure if I remember.
Yeah, it's early in the course. So maybe it got somehow missed, but it's in the first two modules. It's to give that myth a true sense of the actuality. See? That visa, that poison is released. And that poison goes everywhere. So that poison gives us the sense of what we know. See? We're not now speaking this clear-cut Advaitic language of ignorance, versus enlightenment. We're not speaking the language of avidya versus know of Brahman. We're using slightly different language here because this is the process that yogis and jnanis all crave for. The actuality of the situation. The actuality situation. Somewhere in one of the webinars, discourses, I remember whenever, there was also very similar, one young lady from the West, from California actually, speaking to me with the tears in her eyes, distressed about what she's going through, right? Like there's so much fear, so much uncertainty. And yet, everything that she said distinctively speaks to the actuality of true awakening. And I said to her, guess what? You would be hated now by so many real McCoys, like yogis there, who holding their prana, this pranayama, this, that, honing their body, so as to really, really ride that process. And it's all granted to you. It's like completely, utterly, completely no justice, no fairness. It's like grace is truly blind, speaking of. A girl from, I don't know, wherever, Vyoman, goes from Ojai, suddenly gone through awakening.
But everyone wants the desirable kind of rising, because I think you mentioned that in the course,
Yes.
right? That there can be desirable and undesirable.
Yes.
And from what I was told by the person who assisted me in the very first moment, she said that the energy rose, but through Pingala, and it shouldn't. And she said that's why it was so difficult, and that's why there was burning for a year and then
Yes.
cold for the next year, and
Yes.
So I don't know what is the situation right now.
Just why do I speak so long to you? See, it all goes there. I'm very good at bedtime stories. 5-time done, trust me. I'm very good at bedtime stories. Sometimes you just, if you relax and truly understand the value of the bedtime story, it will be more of value than all the do's and don'ts and, So you're here. That's it. That's what happened. And you showed up and you shared. And I recognize you just as you recognized me. This act of recognition causes a release of energy, spark, some principle of viduit here in action. Something, there's some electricity, gentle, gentle, gentle. We don't want anything drastic. And the words, they come. I don't look for them, they come in response to what you've shared. If it felt like, boom, just saying this, it would have been done. Next question, please. No, but I want to take it slowly because of the importance of this. I want, first of all, for you to sleep tonight in the deepest, most relaxed manner you haven't slept for years. I want your face to shine like a moon when you walk out of here. Even if it will be eclipse tomorrow, you still will see yourself there shining, and a huge portion, a huge burden is being put down. So this is the value of the bedtime stories. See? So this, how and why, yes, of course there is some setup, how, but first and foremost is what Kundalini is. We cannot separate that from who we are. If we do that, we there and then do disservice. So this is why when we read about Kundalini, if whoever is acting there as a guide, as an author, if they miss that crucial point, rest assured, they don't come from a place where this is truly spoken, where this truly is spoken. Therefore, a rule of thumb that therapists are free to utilize, facilitators here are given license to work like that as well. See? It's not something happens to me. It's God moves through me as me. That's the understanding. If we are to speak in a very plain, not overtly complicated language. So when that happens, it can override anything. Override anything. Consciousness has no limits, infinite, non-local. How it can display itself, how it can play itself out, we cannot possibly imagine. In someone, everything will remain intact and everything will be different. In someone else, everything will be erased. Everything will be erased. Completely. But in both cases, it's grace. This understanding, this understanding lacking in our culture. It doesn't have room in our culture. But you're the lucky one. You went to the doctor, physician, right? And he or she honestly said, I do not know how to deal with it. That's an act of courage and an act of honesty. Because a lot of doctors don't say that. A lot of people are ready to treat anything. Just give me the patient. I haven't cut anyone in days, you know. My scalpels are here, my this and that. I just want to tear you apart. You know, I'm just exaggerating. It's just, you know, part of the story. In bedtime story, there need to be a little bit of, right? The grey wolf, you know, the demons, but then all of them are appeased and pacified. So of course this doctor can be ignorant person, just taught 6 years, spent 6 years learning this. Of course he wants to apply it now. Well, I'm wasted 6 years now and I don't know what's happening to you? You might be kidding. Of course I know what's happening to you. Show me your pulse, this, that, okay, yeah. You know, we've got it all covered, my dear. No, you're lucky that didn't happen to you. People end up in asylums We used to catch them in California back in the days. I spoke to these guys, peas in the field. It was not even safe to walk on streets, because after all that Timothy Leary and LSD, all these experiments, there came closure, they clamped down. There was this phase, they went clamped down on those who display any outward signs of being high. And guess what? At that very time, many gurus were there, Shakti path receiving people. Guru is in town, and half the group walking around the town swooned. Police car stops, there's no presence of alcohol, nothing, but your eyes look too suspicious, my dear. Come with us. See? We do not have that in our culture. So therefore, this is where also you understand that you need to find a way of how this would make sense. And this is why it's important to liaise with the traditions and understanding where this not only makes sense, where the whole purpose of life is one way or another expressed through this, because that's what Kundalini is. See? Whatever this non-duality teacher might have uttered, whatever that Advaita teacher might have tried to undermine this energy, like calling it this, that, it could have been because in the moment they felt the aspirant needed something else to hear. These are speculations. We don't want to get lost in this. The important thing is there's nothing other than how this unfolds. Nothing other than this. Everything is the outcome and result of how it unfolds. But how it unfolds is not something that can be manipulated in a way that we used to manipulate, and this is where it belongs to that much, much subtler domain than just injecting something, prescribing something, you see? So the tradition here, aligning yourself with tradition and with understanding, is activating dormant areas even in your own body. Because there is no such thing as just your body or my body. It feels like that. Yes, it's mine, and I have the size for my genes that I know, right? And it's this proportion and this predispositions and this constitutional setup according to that, this, that. Yes, of course. And we are in charge of making sure we look after the body, take care of that. But something else is going on here as well at the very same time. We are body of consciousness. We are body of consciousness. So areas in this body of consciousness that went into dormancy in a given culture, we have no understanding of that. So this is why awakenings now are so becoming more and more commonplace. More and more commonplace. This is why that whole demography is making no sense anymore. It's not like it will be more in a country where this meant to happen. No, consciousness has other plans. It will happen in a country where this is not happening, but must happen, because nobody wants it. Because nobody have any idea that actually only this will bring changes. You see? Give that, like pulling the curtain of the bigger picture. So not to inflate a sense of importance and ego. No. Inflating is it's too long. It has to burst. Ego has to burst into the dimension of the cosmos. All these talks about ego are for people who walk on the streets. People who sit in the cinema now and munching popcorn. The conversation about ego is for them, not for spiritual astute as yourself. You see now the dance dynamic between fear of losing yourself and unraveling yourself across the universe. That's where the predicament happened. That's where not allowance happened. That's where something did not unfold the way it could have unfolded, but we're not here to speculate. Fact is, right now, what's happening here is by far more important than whatever happened prior to that and billions of years before that. Are you with me on that? Okay, so you see? So this is important. It's for you to learn new reality. So as to realize reality is always new. That is Kundalini. Reality cannot be new unless Kundalini is active. Reality will always be the same and dull. Always be the same and dull. Even as you will turn 13 or 15. In the blooming age, everything will be dull unless it is sparked with active life force. There's nothing else that brightens the day. We think the sun brightens the day, but the sun doesn't have light of its own. At least that's how the scriptures go. Sun does not have light of its own. Every planet is there, moved by the power of Prana Shakti. And that Prana Shakti is at that level of at the core, at the base of every human being as a potentiality waiting to be actualized. That's the sole purpose of existence, nothing else. It's like the seed. It has to sprout to become into whatever magnanimous it wants to grow. Of course, it's an enormous existential, accompanied by enormous existential fear of losing it all. But only by losing it all we can truly rise. You can't have your cake and eat it too. So welcome to that proverb. I've repeated it for some 20 years and it still have meaning to it. See? You can't have your cake and eat it too. You know, it's a British proverb. See? And I marveled how remarkably applicable it is to the Kundalini process. And the paradox is completely there. And this is where I find myself repeatedly. Reassurance is that I want reassurance. I want reassurance. I want to know everything will be okay. So therefore, reassurance is given. In that course, a mega reassurance is given. Tour de force of reassurance. But not reassurance on the level of trust me. No. Reassurance is given so that you truly understand how all this sits together. Everything here expressed in the way that it does. And then you feel changes at the very, very cellular level. There is this release, something even first at the gut level. And there are like levels at the gut level, immediately under the solar plexus, and around the navel, and down to the, where all the conglomerate of knots and contractions are, release itself.
And that's where I feel the most pain, actually. It's like here and here. And that's what kind of makes me feel more localized, because this is so intense.
Yes, of course. So when prior to awakening of life force, everything is in a state of homeostasis. A person is there, talking, seeing, expressing, displaying as a real thing, everything. But it's as if not happening. You see? In some phase of one sadhana, one can distinguish. I'm not talking about this now, Harry Potter stuff. I'm not talking about this. But yeah, why not? Why not? It's not about magic wand or have these supernatural abilities. No. It's like when you are in that, you know who is alive and you know who are sleepwalkers. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not as cruel here as to call humankind, as a majority of people, being zombies. No, far from it. But sleepwalkers, certainly. Sleepwalkers. Busy, even if they're like exhibiting so much like chatter and verve and everything. It doesn't mean anything. The true aliveness only checked by the amount of that life force that awake to itself. It's not even awaked in you, not even awaked for you. See? This paradox also to be danced and reconciled. Because you in you was never asleep. So why would it awake for you? For whom that awakening take place then? If the essence of who you are is infinite and never went into sleep, you never slept a wink in your life, ever. For whom this awakening then? Who wakes up? See? This is the real conversation. This is what really creates this possibility of embracing this. And then all these internal pathways open up. Then the energy will flood into the sun and the moon will set in the same place, as the scriptures say. When the sun and the moon set in the same place, right? Then she will rise, then she shall rise. So once Kundalini is in Sushumna, then you don't need to worry about a thing. Nothing. This is grace. You live that grace. In this lifetime, fantastic. You'll be put in service. Whatever that is. Not in this lifetime, why not in the next? By the age of this, that all become immaterial because everything is anew. Everything is anew. Always renewed. See? So, this is where we begin. This is where we begin this rehabilitation. This rehabilitation so that there is a greater relaxation. A greater relaxation begins to take place. And in that greater relaxation, that what was dormant now begin to open up. And in that, everything begins to become more and more and more integral. So whatever may went astray at some point, now is getting the chance to be realigned, adjusted. You see? And you just be fully cooperative and fully present, and then in no time you put it all behind. But it's not about which exercises. Towards the end of this weekend, I will give you some suggestions. Okay? So let's sit in meditations. Let's have these exchanges. Let's hear others. Let's give ourselves to the discourses. Just be fully present. You are here and that's what matters. Okay? Most likely, I would ask you to kind of shake a lot of things off and kind of come out, maybe here, use this even symbology of the eclipsed moon, which many astrologers out there telling us it's an amazing one. So let's use this amazing one for a remake, complete and utter realignment. So there's no need for any practices you've done before. You come out of here with the renewed sense of what is required. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Very good.